Hi, I'm Anne Marie with Speak Confident English, and welcome to your Confident English Wednesday lesson. This is exactly where you want to be every Wednesday if your goal is to advance your English language skills and, most importantly, speak with confidence and fluency in English. So let's get started with this week's topic. We are focused on a grammar topic. In fact, this video is number 1 in a 3-part series where we're focused on the conditionals in English. Those are really challenging sometimes, and I want to make it easier for you to understand and use conditionals in your real life in English. Most of the time, you've probably learned some of those grammar rules for conditionals, such as if plus present simple plus will plus the infinitive is the structure. And that is certainly helpful. That gives you the outline, the structure of how we create the first conditional in English. But it also looks like a math equation. And language isn't math. I want you to understand how we use conditionals in our real life. What do we do with them? Why do we need them? And today we're going to look at the zero and the first conditional because those help us talk about general truths, probabilities, in other words, likely scenarios, likely situations. We also use it to talk about future consequences and promises and warnings. All really interesting and useful things for you to know how to do. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the zero and the first conditional and how we use them to help us do all of those things when we speak. And then don't forget to watch the other 2 videos in this series where we'll also look at the second conditional and the third. So let's get started. Let's start with the zero conditional, which we can use to help us talk about general truths or even our daily routines. I know that you have learned to use the present simple to talk about daily routines, and we use words like always, never, sometimes, rarely. But let's say you want to add some variety. You want to add some complexity to your sentences talking about your routines. You can use the zero conditional to help you do that. Let's focus first on general truths. For example, if I heat ice, it melts. That's a fact. There's nothing we can do to change that. It is true. When I heat ice, it melts. Another fact, I do love my coffee. Everyone knows that. But if I drink too much coffee, I get a headache. Or when I drink too much coffee, I get a headache. You might notice that I'm starting those sentences with either if or when. Both are possible. And then we use the present simple in both clauses of that sentence. So now let's look at an example with a daily routine. Sticking with our theme on coffee, when I wake up in the morning, I always drink my coffee first. Or when he goes to work in the morning, he rides his bicycle. Both of those are just simply talking about a daily routine that someone has, but we're adding some variety by using that zero conditional. So now let's move on to the first conditional. The first conditional helps us express things such as probability, which is how likely something is to happen in the future. We can also use it to talk about future consequences, whether those are positive or negative, and when we are expressing a warning or giving a promise to someone. So let's take a look at a few examples of how the first conditional helps us do that. But don't forget, it's really important to go to the online lesson where you'll get several more examples of how we do it. To start off our discussion about probability, I want to ask you a question. Can you, with 100% certainty, predict the future tomorrow? If you said yes, I definitely want your secret because I don't think any of us can, with 100% certainty, predict the future, but we can express probability or how likely something is going to happen, and we can use the first conditional to help us do that. For example, where I live, it is the middle of winter, and I could say, if it snows a lot today, they will cancel school tomorrow. If it snows a lot today, they will cancel school tomorrow. I'm using the first conditional structure to help me express the probability of school closing for all of the kids tomorrow. Now let's take a look at future consequences. Remember, these can be positive or negative. In this example, I'm going to focus on a negative consequence, but if you go to the online lesson, you'll see some examples with positive consequences as well. So all of us love pizza. I think that's just a fact. I think we should just accept that. And maybe I really want to eat pizza for dinner. It does sound really delicious, but it's February and it's still close to the new year. Many of us still have our resolutions or our goals for the new year. Maybe I'm trying to eat really healthy food and I say, pizza sounds amazing for dinner, but if I eat pizza for dinner tonight, I will regret it in the morning. So my future consequence is that really not great feeling of regret. I will regret it tomorrow if I eat pizza for dinner tonight, which is a total bummer because it does sound really good. And finally, promises and warnings. This first example might be really familiar to you if you've ever come home at the end of a long workday and you just feel exhausted. The last thing you want to do is cook dinner. So you might say to someone, if you cook dinner tonight, I will do the dishes, I promise. If you cook dinner tonight, I will do the dishes. You're using the first conditional to negotiate and express a promise that you intend to keep. And another example with a warning, and this one might be more of a business situation. You could imagine an email that might say, if you don't pay your invoice immediately, we will cancel your service. If you don't pay your invoice immediately, we will cancel your service. Now, that would be a really terrible warning if this is about your Netflix account, your iTunes, or whatever it is that you might be using, Amazon, to watch your favorite TV show. If you're binge watching on something and then you get that email, you're probably going to pay that invoice. So those are two examples of how we use the first conditional to help us express a promise or a warning. And you've also learned about probability and future consequences. And with that, you've just completed your first video in this 3-part series related to using conditionals in real life. Now it's your turn to go practice. Make sure that you visit the online lesson, do the practice activities at the bottom of the lesson, and then go on to part 2 and part 3 for the second and third conditional. Thank you so much for joining me. I love having you here every Wednesday, and I'll see you next week for your Confident English Wednesday lesson.